Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans drift in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X. And the duo is back together as we are talking about a New York Mets victory 7-6 in comeback fashion, as the Fab Four are the men that actually got this team rolling and got that comeback rolling with the Francisco Lindor home run, with the Pete Alonso tying home run, and the single up the middle by Juan Soto to give the ultimate lead to the New York Mets. And the Mets did get that victory. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I love the comeback effort. It would have been nice if Klay Holmes didn't fall apart there in the later stages of the game. But I'm really happy with this team, and I'm really happy with the turnaround that this team now can boast about, especially as they try to go for their third series victory in a row tonight, weather permitting. Of course, the weather hasn't been great in the DMV area over the past couple of days, and the rain is only going to continue. I think the storms are going to be a little bit later today, so it would not shock me if this game gets postponed. And at that point, I don't really know what's going to happen because the weather's supposed to be bad tomorrow too. So I don't even know if a doubleheader would be in the cards before the All-Star break after the next series when the Mets go to Kansas City. So a lot of stuff happening. Hopefully this game gets played, even if it's a delay. If it is delayed, if the game does happen, I'll try to do a post game if I'm available. I don't got anything to do, so we're just waiting to see. But yeah, I'm super happy, man. I was at Camden yesterday. I was rooting on our New York Mets. Great stadium, great environment, good fans over there for the O side too. A little bit of playful banter, of course, as always. But yeah, no, it was a fun time, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about, especially with this team moving forward, trade deadline stuff. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. So I'm happy we're here getting into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually at work, so I was listening to the radio call during the game, and I kind of was frustrated like everybody else when we were down by 4 runs. I'm like, God damn it, we can't get anything going here. Nothing's going right for us. Klay Holmes with another just. Again, some people are going to call it a because he went 5 innings, a quality start. It's not. Like, he looks gassed, and if somebody needs the All-Star break more than anybody, it's him. Now, I don't think that's going to be enough, and now there's been conversations around Sports Talk Radio in regards to Klay Holmes, and that's where I want to start, because obviously Klay Holmes basically almost gave this team no chance to win in his start yesterday, and it wasn't a good start. And the same issues, continue to happen with Klay Holmes. Again, didn't have a lot of walks, right? He had, 5 strikeouts, which, is a lot for Klay Holmes, especially over this last, I would say about a month and a half, where he's not a big strikeout guy and he relies on contact, but he needs the ground balls to get those outs. But 7 hits, 5 runs, all earned in the 5 innings, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. He didn't give up any home runs, which has been a problem as of late. But Klay Holmes is starting to become an issue. And thank God Manaya and Kodai Senga are coming back, because we need reinforcements. And again, Nobody knows. We know Kodai Senga is fragile. One wrong move off the mound, he's back on the IL. Shomanaya with it's not even the oblique to worry about anymore because that seems to be the thing that obviously the thing that kept him out for most of the season, all of the season so far. It's the loose body in his elbow that is always going to be a concern because again, a loose body is something that floats around a bone, a piece of fragment bone that floats around the elbow. And if it lodges somewhere where it's uncomfortable or painful, he might miss a start or he might have to come out of a ball game. And this is why Klay Holmes is the topic of conversation to start the show, is because of the fact that with the Mets needing bullpen help, is Klay Holmes going to be a possibility for the bullpen? Because again, you hear David Stearns talking about Mitch, well, not talking, but you hear the rumors about Mitch Keller and the Mets trying to look for starting pitching early before the deadline. And I wonder if that is a topic of conversation within the Mets brass about Klay Holmes going to the bullpen. Not only because it's not like he's pitched terrible. That's not fair to him. But you can't have starts like this. You can't be using, 4 or 5 guys every time Klay Holmes goes out there because of the fact that, well, guess what? There's other guys in this rotation that hasn't gone deep into games either. And you need Klay Holmes. You need somebody reliable that can give you innings. And it is a big topic of conversation, Chris, when it comes to Klay Holmes. And I've said this from day one. I always expected Klay Holmes to go into the bullpen at some point in the year because I don't think he's not going to pitch good. I never said he wasn't going to pitch good, but I thought the innings were always going to be a problem. And it's not even the All-Star break yet. A week, a couple days before it, and he looks gassed. He looks like he's worn down. No fault of his own is how it is.
Game is postponed today, by the way. So this
Oh,
is turned from a pregame stream into an off-day stream because they're playing a doubleheader tomorrow at some unusual times, especially on the East Coast at 12 p.m. and 5 p.m. respectively. I think they want to get the Mets out of there and on the road to Kansas City in time. So that makes kind of sense, I guess. But good stuff. There we go. Look at that. We got we got the backup. I love it. Rob comes prepared. Surrounding the Klay Holmes conversation, I do agree with you 100%. I think that we all knew when Klay Holmes was signed by the New York Mets, and I think the contract is still great because he's so versatile and you can move him into the bullpen. But I told you that that move wasn't going to happen until at least the second half. At least the second half. And I'm actually kind of happy to see the production that we've gotten from Klay Holmes as a starter, but you can tell there is a point, especially over the past month. He hasn't gotten into the 6th inning ever since his start in June 7th, right? Or on June 7th, I should say. So it's been a good while. It's been a solid month ever since he's been able to get into that 6th inning and complete that 6th inning, I should say. And it just looks like he continues to get to a certain point of the game, whether it's in the 5th or whether it's in the beginning parts of the 6th, and he just hits a wall. He just hits a wall and he looks gassed. The first 5 innings for him was great, though. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take that production from Klay Holmes. And I think that Mendoza said the plan is, which was also very interesting to me, on Sunday, the final game before the All-Star break, they're going to either open up with Manaea or Klay Holmes and have the other guy come into the game after the first guy is done. So it's going to be Klay Holmes and Manaea, or Manaea and then Klay Holmes. And that is interesting to me, to do that with Klay Holmes right before the All-Star break, because that signals to me that they're also probably thinking about, depending on what happens at the deadline, perhaps, especially when Kodai Senga gets back, when Manaea builds up some more innings and gets back to full strength, that Klay Holmes is a realistic possibility in a bullpen that is so very taxed. It's so very taxed. And Rob, we've been very transparent with all the viewers here and talking about the Mets at the deadline. Like, yes, they're getting reinforcements back. Yes, it may feel like those could be deadline acquisitions, getting you guys healthy, but this team needs more to be to solidify themselves as true contenders, right? A bat, a rotation arm at the very minimum, and definitely a high leverage bullpen guy, because I don't think that we can rely on Ryan Stanek at this point. And everybody else just seems to be, worn out. Huascar Brazaban is pitching in a multitude of ways, being an opener, then, coming into the game last night in the 10th inning to get the save. So there's a lot of kind of how do I say this? Mendoza is basically pulling a Houdini act right now and is just trying to get into this All-Star break so that the Mets can get a little bit healthy and David Stearns hopefully works some magic and builds out the rest of this roster. But there's clear needs from the pitching side. I do think at a certain point, especially if the Mets are able to get a rotation arm or two at the deadline, I think two is kind of pushing it, but depending on what quality arm they get at the deadline, I do think Klay Holmes moving into the bullpen is kind of a realistic scenario. Or at that point, maybe they ride it out with Klay Holmes as a starter the rest of the way, and they try to look to move Frankie Montas into the bullpen. I don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't get paid to make those decisions, but I do think at least one starter that we see right now in this rotation is going to move to the bullpen in order to have that kind of, I guess, safety net in the bullpen. So but in terms of the actual game, I mean, we'll get into the hitting side of things too. I'm glad you brought up the Klay Holmes point because, yeah, the offense bailed him out. The
Yep.
offense really did bail him out. I mean, he was going great until he wasn't. He was good until he wasn't, and it just happened like this, like with the snap of a finger, a bases loaded jam. Soft hit here, soft hit there, and he just didn't have his put away pitches anymore. But the Klay Holmes situation is going to be interesting in the second half. And I think that we all knew this, right? We all knew that, yeah, we can try him out as an experimental starter in the first half, but are we really going to rely on that, especially as we try to make a playoff push? And if we do make the playoff push, which I'm assuming we will, is he going to be serviceable and get to the end of the season in the postseason without tiring out? I mean, this guy hasn't started since his rookie season.
Yeah.
So a lot of question marks, and I think Klay Holmes is number one and asking what's going to happen to him.
Yeah, and guys, if you're just tuning in, the game tonight is postponed. Be a doubleheader tomorrow. Game 1 would be at 12:05, and game 2 would be at 5:05. So it's technically a 2-ticket doubleheader. It's not a back-to-back doubleheader. Like 30 minutes after the game, they play the next one. So they're gonna rush fans in and rush fans out, and rush fans in and rush fans out. That's what they're gonna do tomorrow. So doubleheader tomorrow. So no game tonight, and obviously we turned this into from pregame to a rain delay theater type of show postponement. The information at the bottom of your screen about tomorrow's games. But yeah, I agree with you. The thing with Klay Holmes, and that was my biggest concern. It wasn't about can he pitch well. I thought his stuff would translate to a starting pitcher. I just think the innings weren't going to translate, at least not this year. Right? Maybe next year is a different story where, if they do, because I agree with you as well. I don't think they're going to make this move with Klay Holmes until after the deadline, because you can't make this move now when guys are coming back and you're going to protect them innings wise for a little bit. I know there's no what did they say? There's no limitations on Kodai Senga, but there will be. Like, we all know that, right? They say that, but it's just trying to, you're playing a fair game there with the team that you're facing. So I just feel like it's going to happen after the trade deadline, only because the fact that they will have a better idea of what they got at the deadline and what they could get at the deadline. If you get multiple high leverage bullpen arms, maybe you can, deal with Klay Holmes as your fourth starter when Manaya and Kodai Senga are officially back and this rotation is kind of coming into form and finally all healthy. And that's when I think they will make that decision, right? If the Mets find a way to get one high leverage arm and a starting pitcher like Mitch Keller, now you can have an option of like, all right, Klay Holmes, you're going to go to the bullpen. This isn't a demotion, so to speak. It's just the fact that you're needed. It's a Seth Lugo situation where the Mets needed a bullpen arm, and Seth Lugo was very good for us in the bullpen. Yes, we needed a rotation arm, but Seth Lugo is more important to us pitching 2 or 3 days a week than once every week. And that's the situation I think is going to happen with Klay Holmes, where maybe that kick change, that extra pitch that he learned as for being a starter, makes him a better reliever because he has extra pitches instead of 1 or 2 weeks consistently used as a closer or a high leverage reliever with the Yankees. And that's something that, can be a topic of a conversation down the road. But, when it comes to the trade deadline, Chris, and we'll get into the offense in just a little bit, we know what the Mets need, right? It's not a secret, right? Other teams know what the Mets need. And, obviously the rumor came out during last week or right around the Yankee series or right before that about Mitch Keller, and they were kind of conversations. Now, I don't know if the price is way too high, and Stearns don't want to do it. But he's got a couple more years on his deal, Mitch Keller and from the Pirates. But if you were David Stearns right now, and clearly you have a big board in front of you of players you might be targeting and the needs of this team, let's say the Mets are not going to make every big move for every hole. Let's say they're not going to get a high leverage reliever, a top 3 starter, and a top bat on the market. Let's say they can get all 3 of those, or they need all 3 of those, but they're probably going to get 2 out of 3. Let's just be fair about that. I don't expect to get all 3 things in a high leverage situation, but that would be great. But if you had to choose between 2 out of 3, a big bat, a big bullpen arm, or a top 3 starter, and you can only get 2 of those 3, what would it be before we get into last night's game?
Rotation and a bat, easy, hands down. I think the discussion that we just had about Klay Holmes or Frankie Montas or whoever else that's in this rotation right now being able to move to the bullpen. And at some point this season, maybe as we head closer into September, down the stretch into the playoffs, maybe the Mets do find the ability and the strength to go down to a 5-man rotation. But I do think right now that the ability to move Klay Holmes or whoever else into the bullpen, I hate to say it, that would probably be my last priority at this point. If you go get me a rotation arm, right, that can be very well paired with Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga, hopefully both respectively coming off of the IL strong, right, and back to form, I'm going to take that all day long. And then I think that you definitely need a bat in this lineup. Now, I will say, if it's a bat, I'm still thinking Jarren Duran. Like, that's the one name that
I
still
agree.
pops out to me, because how many times over and over and over have I told you all, and Rob has also agreed with this sentiment, we cannot roll with Tyrone Taylor as our everyday or almost everyday center fielder. The glove is great. The bat just isn't there. The bat has disappeared. He will catch a hot streak, but he's not a consistent enough bat. And I think that maybe Jeff McNeil in center field could be the longer term solution this season for that and to mitigate that. But I think if you go out there and you're able to target a guy like Duran, if the Red Sox are willing to deal him, that's a big if, even still, given all the circumstances surrounding Duran and the contract age, etc., then that would be my priority. But also, you're talking about Mark Vientos. Remember when we opened up this stream talking about Fab Four? I would say a bullpen arm and a rotation arm if Mark Vientos was able to make this a Fab Five, because now we're looking at what production are we going to get from third base. And by the way, I went in on the bottom of this lineup probably about, I don't know, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, when the Mets were in the middle of that terrible stretch when they were getting nothing from the bottom of the lineup. Ever since then, Brett Beatty and Ronnie Mauricio have shut me the hell up. They are swinging really good bats. If you look at the numbers over the past 2 weeks, respectively, for both of these guys, young guys on this team, they are swinging really good bats, and they're just putting together better at bats in general, no matter what the outcome is. And that has taken the pressure off of the Mets needing to rely so much on Mark Vientos, because let's call it for what it is. I know that he came back up off the IL in the Pittsburgh series. The series that we went to was a debacle. We wanted to get out of there as quick as possible because it was so bad. Mark Vientos is not having a good season. Like, this is a sophomore slump at this point for Mark Vientos. The numbers are abysmal. The numbers have been abysmal ever since he's come off the IL, but he wasn't knocking the cover off the baseball by any stretch of the imagination, even before he went on the IL. And I do think that I don't even think that does he have an option left on his contract? I don't think he even has an option left. So that's kind of like maybe where the Mets are stuck. But I do think maybe third base help also could be viable. I mean, you're talking about Eugenio Suarez that could be out there on the market. I'm not sure, but you have the crosstown counterparts that just DFA DJ LeMahieu, and now they're going to need a third baseman at deadline too, and they're definitely going to be heavy players for probably Eugenio Suarez as well if he's moved. So a lot of moving parts. I will say center field and just outfield help in general to get a competent bat and just to keep Jeff McNeil at second base would be my priority. But if Mark Vientos is able to figure it out, I'm not saying defensively, I'm strictly saying offensively, maybe my thinking, my thought process of needing a bat turns into, okay, go get the rotation arm and let's get the bullpen. The offense will be fine. But I have to see it first. I have to see it.
Agree, and I think Mark Vientos is on the fast track of being somebody who will be traded because with Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Baty, and we all know this, guys. Mark Vientos wasn't an organization favorite over Brett Baty and Ronnie Mauricio, right? We all remember a couple of years ago, Ronnie Mauricio was supposed to be the third baseman before he got hurt, right? Brett Baty was kind of, that in between that was learning second base, but it was clear that the Mets liked Brett Baty. And Vientos came on the scene, by nobody's expectation of having a year like that. Even the New York Mets, they did everything possible not to bring up Mark Vientos because what was the biggest problem with Mark Vientos? It wasn't that he can hit. It was that he was positionless, right? He turned out to be not a good third baseman, and he's not, right? Last year, everything just worked out. And it could be a one-hit wonder situation. Not saying it is. Not saying that Mark Vientos can't be, a very good DH or even an average third baseman and a good hitter. But what this team needs is somebody that can come out there every day and perform. And Mauricio and Baty, I'm not saying they can do that either, but they're getting the opportunity now. And Mark Vientos, slowly but surely, is kind of losing, I would say, he lost the position already, that's for sure. And he's already getting less and less playing time already as well. As obviously you guys seen the lineup, Vientos wasn't in the lineup tonight. So it's something to look for when it comes to what are other teams looking for when the Mets make a trade. And I do agree with you, Chris, when it comes to what two things out of the three I would do. I want the bat and I want the rotation arm. You can say all you want about bullpen arms. Starting pitching wins you games in the playoffs. It's just a fact, right? The Mets lost the NLCS because, yes, the Mets got beat up offensively against the Dodgers, but the pitching was not good for the New York Mets. The starting pitching wasn't good, right? Most of these games were over by the fifth inning before the bullpen even came in. The starting pitching matters. And I'm not saying Mitch Keller is going to be the end-all be-all for this rotation if they end up getting him. But if it's somebody of that caliber or a little bit better, rotation arms matter. And especially when you got another couple of months of the season where you need to save this bullpen for, a complete disaster. I think that's also another reason why you get another starting pitcher because of the fact that you need more innings from your starting pitchers. You can have anybody you want in this rotation. If your rotation is not giving you innings, I don't care if you got 7 high leverage relievers in your bullpen. If they're overused, they're overused. They will not they'll look like a shell of themselves. So, and with Stearns being a magician when it comes to finding, the best possible, I guess, low risk, high reward relievers, not just in a trade, but off waivers. And I know that's not exciting to anybody, but he will find guys in his bullpen that will help this team long term for the rest of the season and into the playoffs. He just does that, and he won't give up a lot to do so. So I wouldn't expect a Class A. I wouldn't expect, a Bednar from Pittsburgh unless it's packaged with Mitch Keller somehow, some way. But I don't expect those type of guys. I expect middle of the road bullpen arms that are pretty good, but nothing special. And I think that's what you need. And Stearns always figures out a way to fix his bullpen. And I think that's not what I'm worried about the most. I agree. Duran, I think, is key. He's got this year and 3 more years. He's not a free agent until 2029. So it's going to cost the Mets. But you would expect Drew Gilbert to be in that deal. Just the fact that you're giving a young center fielder that has a lot of potential. So you're probably going to have to give up Drew Gilbert. But again, who cares when you got a guy that's 28 years old this year and won't be a free agent until he's 32. So you got him in his prime years, Jared Duran. Really good defender. I know he's had somewhat of a down season offensively, but you put him in the middle of this lineup with the guys, with the Fab Four, guess what? He might be better. And, I don't like looking at the stats from players that you possibly could trade for and think that's what they're going to give you once they're traded there. A lot of these guys are on bad teams. They're probably already searching for apartments and co-ops that they're looking to get around the cities that are probably potentially going to trade for them. Like clearly they're looking for that. They got to uproot their family. They're planning for this already, right? They don't care about their 14 games, out of first place team that's not going to make the playoffs. They're going to play, but they're not going to care, and that's what they're concerned about. So I don't worry about what their stats look like. Same thing with Alcantara. Same thing with anybody you want to look at, and they're not playing good this year. Things turn around for guys that from a bad team to a really good team and a playoff team, huge difference. So that's why you go get Durant, because he's under control, which is David Stearns loves those type of moves, as you can see multiple times already since he's taken over the Mets and being the president of baseball ops. So yeah, bat rotation arm. Now, again, we'll have a conversation of who you want down the road, right? I think it's obvious that we all want the best player available, if possible, at those two spots. But again, if the Mets come out of this trade deadline, and I know it's a couple of weeks away, but if they come out of this trade deadline with, let's say, all three holes that they could fill at the trade deadline, and they're solid moves, but not the top tier moves, like a Durant and say like someone better than Mitch Keller, and it's only 2 out of the 3. But if they can get all 3 and have solid moves from each of those positions, I think I'll be okay as well. But it's just a matter of, again, I don't think you can half-ass any move you make. Like if you let's say the Mets get Durant, and obviously that's going to cost you because he's under control. Let's say, what do you think? 2 or 3 prospects? 3 prospects to be safe? Like 2 top 10,
yeah.
and probably one that's in the top 20 to 25, probably, most likely. That's probably what you're gonna have to get for Durant. Maybe again, there's gonna be competition for him, so the price might be high. But you're gonna have to figure out what you're going to do. And I'm hoping Stearns is making these phone calls now, get a feel for at least some of these guys, because you can't wait until the last minute, right? I don't want to be waiting on deadline day and we filled no holes and we got to, do a mad dash and do an 8-hour stream because the Mets have done absolutely nothing. I mean, nice for views, but it's not fun, right? It's a little hectic moment, Chris, if that's the case. But hopefully Stearns makes at least one move, I would say right before the All-Star break or right after the All-Star break, a couple of weeks before the deadline. That would be ideal, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know what the actual timeline is going to be, but there's only so much waiting that can happen before, you just run out of options with Mendoza and what he's supposed to do out there every day as a manager and trying to figure out the game plan. Because, every fourth, fifth day right now, you're scheduling an opener, and it sucks to see Brazaban be used as an opener and then Tidwell, coming in after that and just hoping that something sticks. And let's be honest, it cost them a game. It cost them a Subway Series sweep because that's what they had to do with Max Fried going on the mound against them. And that's just hard to win a ball game, even though the Mets almost did come back to win that game. And Chris Davinsky pitched 2 scoreless innings, in the go round. And then Zach Pop got popped, I guess you can say. And he's no longer here. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you see that type of matchup. It honestly, the fact that the Mets won that series is just ridiculous to begin with, right? I mean, going into that series, you're telling me you got Stroman, Rodon, and Fried going up against who even was it in game 1? I completely forget. It doesn't really matter.
Hageman.
Yeah, Hagenman, and then Montas and Davinsky bullpen game. I'm taking that all day long. I'm taking that all day long, 2 out of 3. So it's just hard. And that's what the Mets have been doing really ever since the beginning of the season. It's been opener after opener. I mean, we saw them first do that, I think, with Hagenman all the way back in that dreary Minnesota series. And he did pretty well, albeit. Then we've seen Brandon Waddell. Then we've seen Blake Tidwell. Right. And the list goes on and on and on with openers that we've seen. I'd like to get this rotation in a spot where they don't need to do that. because it's more or less throwing a game away. And how many games can we really afford to throw away than we already have? Because of these 39 losses, I can probably count on both hands, if not maybe more, of games the Mets have just given away. So, yeah, I don't like this opener crap anymore. I'm sick of it. You do that in the first half, okay. But as a general manager, as a president of baseball operations, making these moves and being in charge of these moves, you assess in the first half, which is what I think and what I thought David Stearns was going to do, and you go out there and you be aggressive at the deadline. Like you say all the time, there's really no prospect outside of perhaps Jonah Tong that should be off the table right now. I can't. I don't think I can name you. Maybe Carson Bench. Maybe Carson Bench at this point.
Yeah.
There's no other prospect that should be off the table. I don't even think some of the big league talent that the Mets have right now is off the table. Like Brett Beatty, he's been doing really well. Do you think that he's off the table? I don't think so.
Not even Mauricio.
Not even Mauricio. I don't know. I say this because I'm hoping this is the thought process up top with Stearns. We just don't know though. We just don't know. That's what the thinking process should be though. Because this team, I think the Dodgers, if I'm not mistaken, did they just lose? They just got swept by the Brewers, I'm pretty sure. They got swept. So, like, this National League is wide open. It's a very talented National League, by the way. I mean, Giants, Phillies, right? The Braves are not really a factor, but you got the Dodgers, the Padres. Like, it's a talented National League. And to get out of this National League is going to be very tough. And oh, by the way, the Brewers are also sneaking up on the Chicago Cubs, like they always do.
They always do.
So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of moves to be had. Do we expect 3 high leverage moves across all 3 position groups? No. I think if you fill 2 out of the 3, though, then we can start having discussions about me feeling good about this second half. I feel good about this second half, and I feel good about what the Mets have been able to do in getting themselves out of that just terrible 3-week stretch. I feel good about that. But I think that there's clear gaps. There are clear gaps in this roster, even still, when you get the reinforcements back that need to be addressed. And I don't think it's like impossible to address them. You know what I mean? I think maybe outside of the outfield, right, with Duran, and then you kind of just drop off with guys that you can go and trade for that position. Starting pitching, there's options out there, right? You're going to have to get a little bit crafty in terms of the package that you draw up for the team that you trade with, of course, as always. But in the relief market and in the starting pitching market, there's options. So, yeah, there's options. That's what I'll say, Rob. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I know people are in the chat are still guys on the bottom of your screen. It's scrolling down about the games. It's postponed. Game 1 is at 12:05 tomorrow, and game 2 is at 5:05 tomorrow. So a split doubleheader for the Mets. Obviously, it's Chris said it in the beginning of the stream. It's not looking pretty weather-wise in the DMV. Yeah. So now it turned into a Mets Talk Live rain delay show. So that's what we're doing now. That's why we're not really talking about the game because it's pointless and the lineup and all that stuff. But yeah, you're right, Chris. And you know, I saw Frank in the chat, and Frank, you said this for years on my channel, and probably on Chris' channel too. You don't want to give up the farm. We're not talking about giving up the farm, but again, we've seen it firsthand, and this is the first time in a very long time, probably ever, that I can remember in my lifetime where the Mets had too many actual possible professional prospects in the same position, and they all have come up, and none of them had consistently played on a consistent basis and considered the starter. Acuna, Beatty, Vientos, Mauricio. We've seen this. Even with 2 guys on the roster, it's hard to find them playing time. That is the problem. Now, Mauricio and Beatty are kind of unique because they can play second. And Mauricio obviously can play second, third, and short. Obviously, he's not playing short anytime soon, but that's the problem. And again, the farm system is not what it used to be when I'm assuming Frank's probably talking about the 80s. I can guarantee you that. He's probably talking about that type of era, the 70s, 80s, and maybe even early 90s. The farm system isn't used the same way as it used to be, right? It wasn't all this money rolling around baseball in the 80s like there is today, right? Nowadays, or at least back then, you lived on the farm system. If you didn't draft well or you didn't make trades, and oh, by the way, look at the trades in the 80s. Everybody wants to talk about the Hernandez trade, the Garda trade, and all that. You know what? It was guys that were kind of like, had their time with the Mets and they got rid of to get these guys in. It was trades. It wasn't free agent sign-ins. It was trades by these guys, by the organization. And guess how they got those guys? A couple prospects, a couple of guys that were kind of like fringe players on the New York Mets that, they were expendable. But the Mets actually made moves, big moves, from 83 until 86. They started to realize that what they needed to do was get proven players in here. And yes, you're going to have some prospects that you're going to keep and you're going to hang around because those are the untouchables, like the Dallas Strawberries of the world, the Dwight Goodens, like that, like those type of guys, obviously. But we're not talking about not giving up 9 out of our 10 top prospects. We're not saying that. But here's the unique situation the New York Mets are in. You got Brett Beatty, you got Mark Vientos, and Ronnie Mauricio. All three are on this roster right now, Major League roster right now. Where are these guys playing every day? If Jeff McNeil is going to continue to do what he's doing, he's, for the most part, playing second base and at times center field because you don't have a center fielder. You got to probably trade at least one of these guys off the roster in a Vientos, Mauricio, or Beatty and package them with somebody else to get somebody better, at least for center field or even a pitcher, however you want to package these guys. But you can't keep on relying on these guys to remain on the roster. And these prospects don't get better. Like Mauricio, he can't sit twice or 3 times a week. That's why he's playing every day. It makes the Mets love Ronnie Mauricio. Like, if they can keep Ronnie Mauricio out of all this, they get rid of everybody possible in Vientos, Beatty, Acuna. They would get rid of those guys before they get rid of Mauricio, in my opinion. I think they love Mauricio so much that they could not wait for the first second he was ready to go from the minors. If it was an injury or it was ready to DFA somebody or send somebody else back down. As soon as they got the okay that he was ready to go, he was up here in a millisecond. That should tell you a lot, right? They play around with Vientos' playing time now because he's not playing well. Beatty has been up and down through the minors and majors. And Mauricio has been starting mostly almost every day. And they even give him opportunities where he's batting right-handed. And he's not very good right-handed. That just tells you how much they believe in him. Now, again, should it stop you from trading Mauricio if it gets you somebody that can impact this team more? Because let's be honest, guys, Ronnie Mauricio at this moment is still somewhere in the 6 or below part of the lineup, and that's fine, right? We need help in that department. But if I think a rotation arm, or let's say a Duran, somebody who's already proven, could help this team more than a guy like Ronnie Mauricio at this moment. Now, it could be better when it comes to the overall, outlook of this whole thing when it comes to the New York Mets and what they're looking for and what they're trying to do. Now, do they want to trade Mauricio? No. Listen, no team goes in there saying, oh my God, I got to trade 4 or 5 guys on my farm system to actually get better. But sometimes you got to be a little uncomfortable, Chris. And I think some Met fans, and some of them are in the chat right now, they don't want to be uncomfortable. And that's the problem. And we hope David Stearns gets a little bit uncomfortable because that's the only way you get better at the deadline.
Yeah, I think it's about calculated risks too. I think that David Stearns has played it safe for the majority of the time in his tenure so far. And I hope that he's just waiting for the right moment, which should be this deadline, to pull off a risky move and hopes that it pays off big time, right? This is what building a championship roster is all about. You assess your needs in the first half, and then you go out there and make a deal and make your team better. I think a lot of people also get caught up in the recency bias. I just gave both Beatty and Mauricio praise, but like it's taken them a while to fully get going, and there's really no guarantees, as Rob always says, that they're going to continue on this trajectory. I think that, listen, quite frankly, I will say I think Ronnie Mauricio is the more complete ball player over Brett Beatty. That's not a knock on Brett Beatty, but I'm just talking about strict power potential and also defensive upside with the arm at third base in particular. I think that Ronnie Mauricio has the makings and the tools to be a little bit more of a complete ball player. But we're also not talking about, this is the main point that I want to drive home here, because a lot of people are saying don't sell the farm, don't sell the farm. We're not talking about selling the farm, as Rob just said. We're not telling, Mets fans that David Stearns needs to go and send the top 3 prospects to go get Jarren Duran. That's not realistic. We're not sending over Mauricio Beatty and then Jonah Tong for one player in Jarren Duran. There is going to be a headliner. There's always a headliner of every single trade. There's always one, right? And then you fill in the rest of the trade with, let's say, your number 11 prospect. Guys that, let's be honest, we don't really like. Does anybody know who the number 11 prospect for the Mets is right now? I haven't looked at the list in a long time. I can't even tell you. Last time I checked in the offseason, it was the lefty, I think from one of the Carolina schools that had an injury, but I forgot his name now. But I can't even tell you who the number 11 prospect is right now, right? And so we're talking about headliners. You think the Marlins are going to give up Sandy Alcantara for free without asking for Mauricio or Beatty to hopefully be a part of their future infield? Like, no. But we're not talking about getting rid of Beatty and Mauricio both. But we're saying that everybody should be on the table in these discussions.
Yep.
That's it. We're talking about a headliner, fill the rest of the trade out with lower level prospects, or whatever else it takes to get the deal done. We're not, it's an or situation. It's not an and situation. It's not this guy and this guy. Here you go. We're selling the farm because we're desperate. That's not really how trades work. So, yeah, I don't know. For Duran, you're right. It's probably 2 top 10 prospects, but again, I don't think it's going to be 2 top 5 prospects. I don't think that's going to be the case. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So, I understand where fans get concerned about depleting the farm system, but how many, like, if you watch basketball, if you're a Knicks fan, the Knicks are in win now mode because they have made all the necessary moves to bring in stars to win now. And they have a window of, like, let's say 3 years, 4 years, maybe. Like, this is your time to go for it. I don't know, man. I hope that's making sense, because I just can't rationalize the idea of waiting 3 more years in hopes of these prospects panning out when we already have Alvarez has been up. Guess what? Where's Alvarez right now? He's struggling. He's catching his stride in AAA, but again, it's AAA. It's a different competition. It's not the same level. Beatty, Mauricio, we've been waiting for them to finally come alive, and they finally have, right? Tidwell's come up, and he's not like he's got the tools. He's got tools, but he has not really figured it out. I don't know. It's going to be, and I said this even back in 2023 when we made the overhaul for prospects like Clifford, Drew Gilbert, etc., Marco Vargas, right, from the Marlins, and the David Robertson deal. I said that when we fast forward, whether it's 2024, 2025, or whenever, the Mets are competitive enough to make a championship run again, it's going to, whoever is in charge at that point, because it wasn't David Stearns at that point when we were talking about that in 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was Epler. When whoever's in charge in 2025 is going to have a really tough time deciding which prospects to let go versus which prospects to not let go. But they were very also adamant, this Mets organization, and they told Max Scherzer this, and Max Scherzer made sure to tell the world this, that they are planning to go for it in 2025. Right? Last year was an overachieving year with a roster that may or may not, deserve to be in the NLCS based off of roster talent alone, and they made a run. but this is the time to go for it. What are Mets fans so scared of? What are Mets fans so scared of?
Pete
They're
Crow
scared
Armstrong.
of they're scared of Pete Crow Armstrong
Correct.
situation 2.0. That's what you're scared of.
Well,
And that's okay because I
yeah,
get it. Pete Crow Armstrong
okay.
is starting in the outfield for the NL All-Star team this year. I get it. But if we keep living in this fear as Mets fans that this guy that we trade away is going to be the next best thing since sliced bread because, we're scared of that happening. So we can't go get an offensive upgrade to actually make a run right now. I can't buy into that.
Well, Chris, and again, for people who have that PCA syndrome, we have to understand the logic of that situation when it comes to how stupid that trade was. The Mets weren't good enough,
Right.
and the Cubs are always a threat to be contenders in the league. That's the difference of what the Mets did, right? The fact that you might trade top prospects to the Pirates, to the White Sox, to the Rockies, teams that, let's be honest, guys, those guys that we trade are going to become free agents on those teams because they're never going to spend the money to keep them. Those are guys going to the Paul Skeens of the world, like that. Like that PCA situation was so unique in what the Mets did because the Mets were basically hovering around 500 right around the deadline. Like they were a couple games over. They weren't good enough. We all knew that, except the front office.
We're talking about a rotation at that point too, if I'm not mistaken, that had Rick Porcello. Was that Rick Porcello year?
You might have been right. Yeah, that was the year
Was that
after
Rick Porcello year?
pandemic,
Look
yep.
at the rotation that we
Yeah.
had, right? And I'm not saying listen, the rotation is clearly better this year than it was that year, right? For the Mets in that season. But that original point is absolutely correct that you just made, and I want to make sure you say it louder, is that was a stupid trade based
Yes.
off of the circumstances of the Mets' talent and ability to make a serious run at the World Series in that given year. That trade should have never happened. Never. It should have never happened. But it's different circumstance because
Correct.
that team was not ready at all, and this team is. That's it.
Yes. And again, the prospect hugging problem is the fact that you're still in this Wilpon mode, which is extremely annoying. And number two, prospect huggers are for small market teams. The Mets are not that, right? We have to stop that, right? And for all the prospect huggers, you should be excited about this team. Jeff McNeil, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, right? Those three guys are the forefront and I would say the heartbeat of this organization, of this roster. They're all farm system guys, right? But why did those guys get the opportunities to be a part of becoming better players, becoming the heartbeat of this team? You know why? Because the team sucked. Because I could have tell you this. If 2018, 2019, 2020, around those years, or even earlier than that, because I think Nimmo came up around 2016, 17. If the Mets were really good, there would be a pretty good chance those guys might have been traded for better players. You know why? Because it ain't the 90s anymore, as Frank said, right? The Yankees dynasty was built on farm systems, but look at those trades they made at deadlines. The David Justice of the world in 2000. All right. They made huge trades, right? Who was the first baseman for the Yankees? Tina Martinez. You know how they got him? They traded for him, if I'm not mistaken, from Seattle. Paul O'Neill, trade, right? We're talking about, there was a core four in Posada, Pettit, Jeter, and Williams, understandable. But that's only 4 guys out of the 9 guys that play every day. We have to understand that. We have to really understand that. And I think people forget the fact that prospect hugging and the way farm systems are now is to get better, use most of them or some of them as assets. It's a trend nowadays. Look at every team that have been in the World Series and made the World Series over the last 5 years. I only care about the last 5 years. I don't care about 86. I don't care about the late 90s of the Yankee dynasty. I don't care about that. The last 5 years, teams that make the World Series and win championships, they made the best moves at the deadline. It's a fact. Go back to the Braves. Go back to 2019 Nationals, right? They weren't huge moves, but you fill your holes, good things can happen, right? 2022, 2023, look at the teams. Look at the teams last year. The Dodgers. Who killed the New York Mets? Tommy Edman. They got him from St. Louis. They made really good moves at the deadline. Look at the Yankees. I know nobody wants to care about that, but they made the Jazz Chisholm trade, right? That was actually very necessary, as he was one of the better players on that team other than Stanton. Like, those little moves, and again, I don't really count the Yankees so much because they had a terrible American League to go through, but they made moves at the deadline. They made better moves than the Mets at the deadline, which is understandable last year. But what I'm talking about is, again, go back to the Texas Rangers, right? What did they do at the deadline? Go the Arizona Diamondbacks. They made bullpen moves at the deadline. It's what the holes that you need can always be filled with top prospects, especially right now, right? The Mets need bullpen help, high leverage bullpen arm. Besides Brooke Raley, where's your top prospect that's coming up to help that bullpen? We don't have one. Unless you're going to make Sproat or Tong a part of the bullpen, it's not happening, and they're not going to do that, right? Center fielder, Drew Gilbert has been falling down the charts, and by the way, your number 11 top prospect is Jonathan Santucci, by the way, left-handed pitcher.
That's Santucci,
okay?
Correct, yes.
So, Drew Gilbert is number 9 now when he was in the top 5, a year and a half ago? So where are these guys coming from? Jet Williams, they're not messing with him, even though his ETA is now. They're not doing that. And I tell you that right now, Jet Williams is on the block. Because if you can get a Jared Durant for Jet Williams, you freaking do that in a heartbeat. Heartbeat. Because Jared Durant, you hope Jet Williams is Durant. That's all you can hope for. And that's the problem. There's too much hope for these top prospects. If they're not helping us now, what is the point, right? Who is it? Carson Benz. He ain't ready yet. It would be nice. He's an outfielder. We could use him, right? Ain't happening right now. Nolan McLean. Clearly the Mets, when they had all the pitching problems in the world, didn't want to bring up Stroh, didn't want to bring up McLean or Tong. That tells you something that they still want these kids to develop, right? Jesus Baez, 2027. Elian Pena, 2030. Let's keep going. Jeremy Rodriguez, 2028. Jonah Tong, 2026. Carson Benz, 2027. You see the trend? None of these guys are ready to help this team win right now. Some of them will still be here to help us in 26 and 25, maybe 26 definitely, and possibly 27. But you can't worry about 27 right now because you know what? In 2027, Pete Alonso will be 32, 33 years old. Francisco Lindor will be 32, 33 years old. Brandon Nimmo will be 32, 33 years old. You see that problem? They're going out of their prime. They're in that area where they can start getting older quickly as they played a lot, as all these guys have played a lot of games. You can't lose out on these best years of the players I just mentioned. That's why. So the fact is, you go get what you need. And again, it doesn't have to be top. Me and Chris have been saying this the whole show. It doesn't have to be all top tier players at each trade you make to fill a hole. I think we all agree there needs to be one. And I don't think anybody is complaining which one it would be because I think we all be okay with it. Now, I think the best move shouldn't be a bullpen arm, to be quite honest with you. It should be either a bat or a rotation arm. If you get one of those, if you get it, let's just say, Chris, who's the best arm on the market starting pitching wise? Let's just say at this point that we know of.
Probably Alcantara, I would say.
Oh, there you go. Alcantara. Let's say he's the big one on the market. The Mets land him. Let's say they do go to center field, but they maybe get Cedric Mullins, Luis Robert, because those aren't top tier moves. I mean, some people might see Mullins as a top tier move, but he struggled this year, and we'll see. So I don't think that's a top tier. It would be a solid move because it would be better than Tyrone Taylor. But if you get one top tier move at this deadline, and you get other solid to good moves in other holes, that is a huge motivational factor for this team. Like, how many years we talked about it, Chris? In 2022, the Mets weren't extremely excited about what they did at the deadline. It felt like it took all the motivation out of that team after the deadline, what they did, and they didn't do much. They got four guys, and it didn't impact anything, right? 2024, So let's go back to 2023 when they were sellers. What players went to the media after games during the trade deadline and say, "We want to go for it. We don't want to sell." Right?
Yeah.
It's a motivational thing too. When you're a team, when you're a player on a team that are, let's be honest, the Mets are a top 5 team in baseball, and your front office goes for it. You don't think that's a jolt in the arm for this team? Absolutely it is, because it shows that the organization, the front office, believes in this team. As much as they might say it to the media, we have no idea what they say behind closed doors, right? They might be saying, listen, guys, we don't know if you're good enough. We're going to try to get you more help to make you better. And if that happens, that's a jolt in the arm. And the Mets haven't done that. The last time we had the jolt in the arm was 2015. And again, that's Yoenis Cespedes. That was an average team that finally made a big move at a deadline to get the bat they desperately needed. And of course, a couple of bullpen arms, a couple of bench players, which all filled holes. But it was the fact that they actually went and made the big move, made Lucas Duda better, made Ruben Tejada better, Lagares better, a broken down David Wright on his last leg have a little bit more energy. You see the players I was just talking about? That's the difference between a great deadline or a really good deadline than a half-ass deadline. Because I think it messes with a team's morale if you don't go for it, or at least do what you need to do to fill the holes with really good players, because it could be a used get. It can help this team tremendously, and it'll only make them better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, I don't know, man. A lot of people. Well, I see Frank's comment here saying Taylor Gold Glove, Rob. We have not had a great outfielder to go back to. Wilson and Nails, I think he's saying. But listen, first of all, did we forget about Jose Siri? Jose Siri is going to be coming back at some point too. What the hell do they do with Jose Siri? What do they do? He's a really good glove too. I mean, you're talking about Tyrone Taylor-esque glove right there. And you got to choose at this point, because Jose Siri has, he's not a free agent after this season. He's going to be around unless they move him or DFA him. Like, those are two guys that don't really have that great of bats. And they're basically kind of one and the same. So there's just like competition right now. And I just still think that if you are able to go get an upgrade, if you're telling me that you are going to move this prospect, it doesn't matter what the name is, maybe outside of Jonah Tong, and you are going to get an upgrade at one of these position groups, you do it every day of the week. And I think that there's nothing else on my end that needs to be said other than the fact that the Mets with PCA and that trade in 2021 are not the same team. They were not as ready to make a run as this team right now. Completely different situations. And Brody Van Wagenen was fearing for his job and wanted to make something happen. He took the calculated risk. It wasn't calculated. There's no thinking process actually there. There was none. I don't even want to give him any credit for that. He took a risk, a major one, and it ended up not paying off because guess what? He didn't have the ability to assess where the Mets were truly at. That's why I respect what the Mets did in 2023. Instead of forcing the issue, they just sold it off. And the Mets right now are so much more better off for it. And we're seeing that. So we knew in 2023, wow, we're building the farm system. This is awesome. But are these guys going to be around long term, or are these guys flippable prospects for when the Mets finally get their act together and decide that they are competent and talented enough to make a run? This was always part of the plan, being in this situation. Some of these guys are going to be mainstay prospects, like Rob says, and I am going to agree wholeheartedly with what Rob is saying. We're not like there's going to be guys, a couple of your favorite prospects are still going to be prospects, and you'll see them next season, right? Maybe a September call-up if you're lucky, but with minimal playing time. But some of these guys are needed to headline moves that are going to make this team better. And if we want to just continue to sit here and just stay stagnant, you're right. This core is getting old, right? Nimmo, we're talking about we're having talks about Nimmo being a DH in a few years. You know what I mean? Lindor is not getting any younger. Pete Alonso, same thing if he decides to come back. And I think that was very interesting what he said in his comments about not wanting to join the home run derby, by the way, in Atlanta. He said if the home run derby ever comes around a Citi Field, I would love to do it. So that's a funny comment. But yeah, man, Rob, I think that, I get where the concerns are coming from. I get the PCA, PTSD, so to speak. I understand all that. Scared money does not make any money. And
Yeah.
this is New York, baby. This is New York. This is a big market. You can't play scared. I'm sorry. And after all the, I guess safe plays that David Stearns has made as Mets Pobo since taking over, I think it's time for him to try to, swing for the fences, so to speak. So that I think that this is the perfect time to do it.
Yeah, and that Javi Baez trade was trying to appease Lindor, who was trying to find his footing with the New York Mets once he signed that big deal, right? They were trying to appease him and bringing in his friend, right? I understand the concept, I understand the idea, but it was stupid because of where the team was at. That's the only difference. That's the big difference of then then compared to now. So I don't know how much more time you got, Chris, but just are you good or just let me know?
Yeah, I was gonna say we should probably touch on well, definitely if you want to talk about yesterday's game, I got an extra
Yeah,
15 minutes or so.
yeah,
And also just talk about the outlook of Alvarez and Vientos, because I do think that the Mets are gonna have to figure out what to do with these two guys, right? I mean, Alvarez, and I'm talking about for this season too, because if we're talking about trade deadline additions and trying to get the best offense as possible, are they going to sit back and wait for Vientos and Alvarez to come around at the bat? Or are they just going to continue to roll with Luis Torrens, who also is not really providing much offensively, but his defense is unmatched? And we saw that also play out yesterday, right? Um, so I think, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. I got an extra 15 minutes, so let's do it.
yeah. So I think Alvarez is more the outlook of catcher. I think Alvarez will be back here probably right after the All-Star break. To be quite honest with you, right? He's hitting the ball in the minors. I think it's all about confidence with him. I don't think it's talent at all. Like I don't trust him behind the plate as much, even though he's gotten better. Except backhanding balls in the dirt, which makes no sense. But other than that, I look. They know Alvarez has power. He's shown it back in the minor leagues once he's been there. What did he hit? 5 home runs, 4 or 5 home runs since he's been back there. He's been better. And their outlook for the catcher is always Alvarez. I just think they're trying to get him right and his mind right and his confidence back. And whatever they were trying to fix or change with his stance and what he's doing at the plate, throw it out the window. Just let him swing the bat. Because when he goes for home runs, and you could tell when he's dicking at the plate trying to hit the ball the other way because it doesn't work out. Like he doesn't know how to do that very well. He knows how to hit the ball over the wall. Let him worry about that. He can bat 230 and give me 20 home runs. Like he can do that. That's what he should do. So I think the outlook with Alvarez, I think you'll see him after the All-Star break. And I think Luis Torrens has shown everybody that yes, he's a great defensive catcher. He's huge behind the plate throwing out runners, but he's a backup catcher. He's getting exposed with the bat. He is. You can't survive that for so long unless you're A plus in every other position, which the Mets are not right now. Right? Third base is a hole, center field is a hole. You can't do that. Second base is kind of okay, but not great. The fact is, Alvarez is more needed than probably Mark Vientos at this point because Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Beatty, I think, is a big reason why I think Vientos could find his way out of this team and trade it somewhere in a package. Maybe even trade Vientos because he has years of control to get a bullpen arm. You could do that, right? That could be a move that could come out of nowhere, but it's possible. Again, I think Vientos is kind of the odd man out at this point. And again, we still got 5 more games. Vientos can get red hot over these next 5 games if he plays, which he'll play in the doubleheader. But he could get red hot, and the Mets might have to have a conversation. Well, I guess we might have to keep him around. But I think Alvarez is more important right now than third base because the Mets do have third base options in Mauricio and Beatty that are playing better. We don't have anybody playing better offensive-wise at catcher. And the whole point of this team was supposed to be lineup driven. And I don't think that's changed at all. Stearns has told you, I don't like spending money on the rotation or in the bullpen. We spend money on the lineup. And that's what he's probably thinking about. And with Alvarez supposed to be a big part of this team offensively, I think that's the idea behind it. But I guess Alvarez is the only, logical choice to bring him back up. And, I think we need him more. I think he has the potential, I think, to be the player that we all expected in Mark Vientos, in my opinion, Chris.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially with such a demanding position that's so hard to get right, and the Mets catching situation for so long has just not been right. Alvarez is going to be a key piece, and there's only you can only go so long with having basically a net zero with the bat in Luis Torrens, like you just mentioned. Like Luis Torrens is a great backup catcher, like one of the best in the league, and his defense definitely serves a purpose. But like also, so does Hayden Sangers, right? His defense is also pretty good, right? And he just can't provide much with the bat. And we need the upside with the bat right now, because you are correct. This lineup or this team is lineup driven. It absolutely is. It's built on his offense, and that's why you got Juan Soto and paired him with Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, etc. Mark Vientos, going into the 2024 season, before we knew what Mark Vientos was going to do in that season, we were talking about him being expendable. We were talking about him in trade packages in the offseason, etc. Right? And, I don't know. He's going to have to figure it out. I'm curious to see how much weight his numbers from last season holds in this front office at this deadline. I'm very curious. I wouldn't be would anybody be shocked if Mark Vientos is the odd man out over a guy like Mauricio? I wouldn't. Listen, I just told you that Ronnie Mauricio is a more complete ball player than Brett Beatty. I think ever so slightly, because Beatty is figuring out on both ends of the ball, but I still think that Ronnie Mauricio has more talent. Ronnie Mauricio is also light years ahead of Mark Vientos in terms of also being a complete ball player. And defensively, it's not even close.
Yep.
I mean, Mark Vientos, we saw last year he played serviceable, okay defense. I think that people are giving him a little bit more credit defensively, but he played an average defense, and the statistics definitely show that. But I don't know, man. Are we going to rely on last year's numbers to try to predict and forecast what he's going to do for this team in the future? Or are we just going to be like, hey, listen, you were always part of trade talks. You had a good season for us because Brett Beatty couldn't take the position over, and we appreciate your services, and we need to just get better right now. I don't know, Rob. Like, I genuinely think that's a possibility.
I think the way they're treating them now tells you that they don't care about last year's numbers. To be quite honest,
Valid.
I don't think they care. To be quite honest with you, I don't think it matters, right? Acuna is back in the minor leagues. Do they care about his numbers last year? No, right? When he came up and later in the year, they don't care about that. As I told you, they don't care about those last year numbers. Those are irrelevant. Right? Does anybody care about Pete Alonso's numbers last year? They just gave him $30 million. So they clearly didn't care about last year's stats, right? So the fact is, Alvarez was supposed to be this big hitter, big power guy, top prospect. Vientos, again, positionless. The Mets did everything they can not to bring Vientos on this team. Even when he hit that big home run against the Rays, they set his ass right back down. Right? Circumstances call for it, and the Mets hit lightning in a bottle with Vientos. Nobody expected that, but there was never a thought that Vientos would be playing any position other than DH. And the fact that he played better defense than anybody expected last year, again, it is possible. It could have been a one-hit wonder. It is very possible. And I'm not saying that they lost all confidence in Mark Vientos. Maybe they have. But you have to realize that Ronnie Mauricio was much better prospect than Ronnie Mauricio ever was. Ronnie Mauricio was a much better prospect than Mark Vientos ever was.
Yeah.
Ronnie Mauricio is considered a 5-tool player. Defense, arm, hitting, speed, everything. Vientos is a bat. What is Vientos not doing? He's not hitting. That's his only quality. The reason why
Mhm.
Brett Beatty is still on this or in this organization and on this team is because he got better defensively and his bat started to pick up a little bit. But again, Brett Beatty, I think, is going to be an important utility infielder for this team, right? Brett Beatty shows you that he can play 3 times a week and still perform because he plays good defense at second and third, and he's been hitting the ball. He's been getting opportunities. And when he gets opportunities to pinch hit, he's done it pretty well as well. So I think the fact that Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Beatty are still the crown jewels in Stearns' mind when it comes to what they project from these two guys, Vientos was never projected to do anything except possibly hit, but he's not doing that now. So he's basically taking up a roster spot, not doing anything. I mean, we can really say that Luis Torrens has been more productive offensively than Mark Vientos this year. I think we can all say that. I mean, not saying that Vientos is not better than Torrens hidden wise, of course he is. But Torrens has been more impactful than Mark Vientos. Jeff McNeil have been more impactful than Mark Vientos.
Oh,
Like,
that's not even a question. Jeff
yeah,
McNeil has been he
it's
proved me
crazy.
wrong for sure.
And that's a turn of 1 year. That's why you can never lose focus on trying to get better. And if that's a trade deadline acquisition, if that's a top prospect you want to bring up, which again, I just gave you all the guys' names in the top 10, none of these guys are ultimately ready. And if the guys that are ready are kind of already blocked by other guys. So it's got to be a deadline acquisition. And sometimes it's addition by subtraction. Sometimes you can get better that way, Chris. So just give me your final thoughts and what do you expect in this doubleheader tomorrow?
Yeah, my final thoughts are that, Rob, I know you enjoyed yesterday's game because, you've been calling for this core to finally put this team on their backs offensively, and they finally did that. And Steve Cohen gave him praise. What is it, the Fab Four? I think he said
Yep.
something like that. Next, it was a good display. A bloop in the blast is basically how it played out. And it started with Lindor in the later stages of the game, right? With the home run, the 2-run home run. You get things rolling, you get on base and let the guys deliver for you. Let Pete Alonso deliver for you, right? By the way, Pete Alonso's clutch statistics right now, if you go look at his splits on Baseball Reference, they're otherworldly. It's tremendous. Like runners in scoring position, he's hitting over 350. Late and close, 2 outs, runners in scoring position. He's got over 900 OPS. I mean, it's just ridiculous the type of season that Pete Alonso is having. So he's going to get his money. He's going to get paid by the Mets or whoever else decides to give him the bag. But yeah, yesterday's game was much needed to keep the vibes rolling. And it's unfortunate that today's rained out, doubleheader tomorrow. I'm curious to see what the Mets do in game 3 or game 2 tomorrow with the opener, quote unquote. I'm curious what that's going to be like.
So is Senga pitching game 1 after the opener?
No, Senga?
Or some
He's pitching Friday. Senga's pitching Friday.
okay, that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Senga's back Friday against the Royals. Tomorrow's going to be David Peterson. I don't know if they're going to switch it to game 2, but I'm assuming they're just going to leave it in game 1 for David Peterson because he was scheduled to be tonight. And then game 2 tomorrow, they don't really have anybody. I mean, would it shock anybody if they put an opener like Davinsky or whoever else again and try to run that back and try to squeak one by? I don't like it. I don't want that to happen, but I don't know. Again, enough with this opening pitcher crap garbage. I don't care what you want to call it. We need a rotation that is able to put a competitive game together day in, day out, 1 through 5 or 1 through 6. I don't care. Get it done. It's ridiculous trotting out Waddell, Hagenman, Davinsky, and hoping for this offense to just carry this team on its backs that often. I think that's not a good recipe for success. So again, Mendoza and the Mets have gotten themselves out of that mini rut that they were in. That's awesome to see. They're trying to go into the All-Star break on a high note.
Yep.
They're trying to win their 3rd series in a row before heading to Kansas City as part of the last series before the All-Star break. But there's stuff that needs to happen from the top down to fill out this roster and really get it into a good situation to make a run. I think that everything, like the foundation of this team is there. Like, I love the foundation of this team. I think that is solid. You can build off of that. But the Mets have the pieces to add onto this foundation with proven talent and proven veteran presence. And I'm not talking about veteran presence like Jared Young. I'm talking about guys that make an impact on a team. You know what I mean? A true veteran, I think, that can come in like Cespedes did in 2015 and put this team over the top and take them to where they should be. So those are my final thoughts. Really good game yesterday. I was excited to see it in person, and doubleheader tomorrow. I can't do a pregame tomorrow. I'm not sure about you for the postgame, but I can do a postgame probably for both games. And so we'll have some fun on a stream and breaking down each of those games. So stay tuned, subscribe, hit the thumbs up. Definitely appreciate it.
There you go, guys. Yes, I can't do a pregame tomorrow, but I can do a postgame for game 1 and a pre and post for game 2. So a lot of streams tomorrow again, guys. So once again, there is a doubleheader tomorrow. The game was postponed today. That's why we transitioned to a Mets Talk Live on this channels today. So tomorrow we'll have Peterson pitching and probably an opener. I'm hoping Hageman, Davinsky back to back. That would be nice. I think Hageman shows that he throws strikes, which is a good sign. And let's just hope that the Mets come out with a series victory ahead in the Kansas City. So listen, guys. Overall, the New York Mets have right in the ship for the most part. They're looking for their 3rd series win in a row. And if this is their worst losing stretch of the year, we're talking about 97-plus win team, in my opinion, with around 50, like 60, a lot of games to go. Let's just make that fact. But if we can get closer to 60 by the end when the All-Star game starts, let's say if we're 57 wins, that's another 4 wins out of the next 5, which would be great. You're talking about 57 wins and, only 40 losses. You're in a good spot coming into the quote-unquote second half of the season over the last, half of games, and see what the Mets got to do. The next big deal is the trade deadline, and we'll see what they're going to do there. So thank you for watching a split show of Mets pregame transition into a Mets Talk Live, guys. Have a good day, guys. Let's go Mets. I'll see you tomorrow for the doubleheader. Have a good night, guys. Let's go Mets.
Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets Talk Live, bring the hype, make it clear.